I'm Elias Moretti, 32 corporate attorney and reluctant groom-to-be. The chandelier above me was heavy with too many crystals, like it was trying to outshine the truth. We were gathered in the Versailles room of the Belvedere Hotel 6 floors above the city skyline, surrounded by gold leaf molding, champagne towers, and the smell of expensive silence. My name was on the gilded envelope, embossed in cursive engagement party for Elias and Cassandra, but no one let me speak. The microphone passed from Cassandra's father to her godmother to her best friend from Brown. Not once did it come my way. I wasn't even seated next to Cassandra. I was 3 chairs down, wedged between her Uncle Frank and a woman I didn't recognize, who kept calling me Elliot. "Excuse me," I whispered to the planner as she adjusted a floral arch made of white hydrangeas and pale pink roses. "Am I supposed to give a toast or say something?" She didn't look up from her clipboard. "Actually, the family has decided to keep it tight. Just a few words from Cassandra's side. You know, so it doesn't drag." My voice stayed caught in my throat, as if silence had been pre-approved. Around me, the applause rolled like gentle thunder, polite, practiced. Cassandra stood on the small stage, radiant in ivory silk. Her left hand raised subtly to show off the ring that cost more than my car. Her speech was full of laughter and quotes from poems I knew she'd never read. She didn't glance at me once. I clapped too, out of reflex. I smiled on cue. My jaw ached from rehearsing sincerity. Then came the family slideshow. Childhood photos of Cassandra in ballet costumes, on horseback, at Harvard. Her parents posed in matching Patagonia fleeces beside a glacier in Iceland. And suddenly there I was, flickering onto the screen one photo. A grainy image of me holding a sparkler at someone else's wedding. No caption, no context. Just, Elias Cassandra's fiancé. A waiter leaned in with a tray of shrimp cocktail. I muttered, "Thanks." Took one, and caught him giving me a quick once-over like he was trying to place me. "You with catering too?" he asked. I blinked. "No. I'm the groom." "Oh, sorry. Man, you kinda blend in." It wasn't rude. It was honest. I looked down at the tailored navy suit I'd picked just to match Cassandra's outfit. Safe, non-imposing, forgettable. Someone nearby called me Mr. Caswell, Cassandra's last name. They assumed I'd taken it. If you've ever felt invisible at your own celebration, or watched someone else write your life's script in cursive gold without asking your name, drop a comment. Let me know where you're watching from. Hit like or subscribe if family drama ever made you question your place in the room. I stood up quietly, my hands trembling just enough to spill a bit of Prosecco onto the white tablecloth. No one noticed. They were already turning their heads toward the grand entrance. Someone important had arrived late. A hush rolled through the room. And then, striding across the parquet floor in patent leather shoes, was Judge Malcolm Brenner, the federal judge I clerked for in my 20s, the same man who now wore his reputation like a cathedral robe. He approached the stage with slow, intentional steps, holding a simple manila folder in one hand. He didn't look at Cassandra. He looked straight at me. "Elias," he said, in his low courtroom voice, "I believe you left this behind. Your Supreme Court petition brief. The one that's already made waves at Columbia and Stanford Law." He placed the folder in my hands like it was a crown. And then louder. For everyone to hear, he added, "Quite a rare feat for a man of your age. You've made us proud." The microphone in Cassandra's hand drooped. Every neck turned. And for the first time that night, I felt the silence shift in my direction. The room didn't cheer. Exactly. It recoiled, then paused, as if recalibrating. I could almost hear the mental rewrites happening in real time. Wait. Elias is important. The shock hit Cassandra's father first. He turned from his chair and gave me a stiff half-smile, the kind he usually reserved for somber occasions, like property tax meetings or checking the wine cellar humidity. His lips moved, but no words came out. Judge Brenner was gone as quickly as he'd appeared, slipping away down the hall, his presence like a signature sealed in wax. I held the manila folder against my chest as if it were proof I wasn't a ghost. Cassandra's mother rose and clinked a glass. Well, wasn't that unexpected? Let's get back to the schedule, shall we? The pianist resumed something tasteful and slow. The crowd returned to its clatter of cutlery, half-hearted laughter, and the sound of champagne being poured. But it was different now. Eyes occasionally flicked in my direction, noticing I was no longer just Cassandra's quiet accessory. I had credentials. I had weight. I hated that it took another man, an older, whiter, more powerful man, to validate that. Cassandra came up to me 15 minutes later, her expression carefully neutral, her smile tight. "You could have told me he was coming," she said. "I didn't know," I replied, truthfully. "Well, it was a bit much. Don't you think kinda stole the focus? I thought that's what you wanted tonight, to focus on you." That stung her, and we both knew it. She looked away, then back. "Just don't let it happen again." Okay, it. Not the speech. Not your moment. Just it. She walked off to greet another cousin I hadn't been introduced to. I stood there for another few seconds before slipping out to the balcony. Outside, the city lights blinked without urgency. I leaned against the railing and let the cold bite into my hands. That sharp contrast, the chill on my skin, versus the warm applause I never got, made something clench inside my chest. I wasn't angry yet, just aware. That slow brewing awareness that this life, this engagement, this entire golden-plated narrative, I wasn't the one holding the pen. I met Cassandra through a merger. Not a romantic one, a literal corporate merger. Her family's luxury wellness brand was acquiring a smaller startup that I was helping represent. The first time she saw me, I was explaining arbitration clauses to a room of executives who barely looked up from their phones. She told me later she liked how still I seemed, like a tree in a storm. Back then, she was softer, or maybe I was more open. We'd talk about travel, music, even silence. We had long lunches where time felt like water, no edge, no structure. But the closer we got to formal commitment, the more I watched her curl into the identity her family had carved for her. The family had plans, and I was convenient. Not dazzling, not rebellious, but educated, polite, self-sufficient, and most importantly, unattached to expectations. They could mold me, and I let them. Until now. Inside, the music changed again, something upbeat. The sliding door opened and my brother Luca stepped out. His suit rumpled like always, 2 buttons undone, holding a drink that looked like he stole it from a teenager's prom. "You're missing the cake cutting," he said. "Let them cut it." He handed me the drink. Mom said to smile more. Dad said nothing, which is probably worse. I took the glass and didn't sip. "Did you hear what Brenner said?" "Heard it. Watched it. Watched half the room act like they suddenly remembered your name." He paused. "You know you scared them. Right. Who all of them? Her. Them. Because you weren't supposed to become anything. You were just supposed to stay still." That sentence hit deeper than I admitted. "Luca," I asked quietly, "do you think they even like me? Or am I just a resume they can host dinners around?" He didn't answer at first. "Then I think they don't know what to do with you when you're not smiling. That scares people more than shouting." I looked at him. "You're drunk." He laughed. Slightly. "But I'm also right." The sliding door opened again, And this time it was Nora. Nora wasn't family. She wasn't even technically a guest. She was the assistant event photographer. Someone I'd seen only in glimpses between flashes of light and soft apologies as she dodged the dance floor. Small, sharp, brown-eyed, hair in a knot. She wore plain black and carried herself like someone who'd seen too much to ever be impressed. "I'm sorry," she said, looking at me, not Luca. "I wasn't trying to interrupt. You're not." She shifted her weight awkwardly. "Judge Brenner. That was something. You were inside. I was near the curtain when it happened." Everyone froze. I smiled a little. "Yeah? That happens when someone talks about real things in a room full of people pretending." Nora blinked, surprised. "Anyway," she said, holding up her camera, "I got a few great shots of you during the moment. I wasn't supposed to, but I thought you might want them." She handed me a small white card, her name and portfolio link. "I appreciate that." I said, gently, "Congrats." She added, but it sounded like a question. She turned to leave. Luca raised his eyebrows at me like he'd just seen something very interesting. "She knew who you were," he muttered. "That makes one person." We watched her vanish down the hall, then back through the service door. I looked at her card. It was simple. No logo, just Nora Reyes, freelance photojournalist. Real faces. No edits. I pocketed it. The music inside grew louder. Someone yelled, "Time for the bride and groom's dance." Cassandra's voice came through the microphone again. "Where's Elias?" I didn't move. I just stared at the skyline a bit longer. If I walked back in now, they'd expect me to smile and sway and pose for the camera. Be the good accessory again. Be still. Say nothing. But something was shifting inside me. Quietly. Permanently. And I wasn't sure it could be undone. I eventually walked back in, not because I wanted to, but because disappearing completely would have handed them the narrative. That I was ungrateful. That I was dramatic. That I didn't understand tradition. So I returned, slowly, through the side entrance by the piano, unnoticed at first. Cassandra was standing center floor, waiting beneath a soft wash of amber light. The DJ had switched to some generic acoustic ballad, and all the phones were up. I could see our faces reflected in the screens before I even reached her. "There you are," she whispered, half into a smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Everyone's watching." I placed a hand on her waist. Her gown was stiff with layers of boning and satin, like dancing with an antique cabinet. I nodded at the DJ, and the music started again. We turned in slow, practiced circles, her left hand on my shoulder, her right hand cold in mine. "It was always yours. I was just the decoration." That sentence landed hard between us, like a dropped plate, quiet at first, then unmistakably broken. She said nothing for the rest of the song. When it ended, she leaned in to kiss my cheek, but I turned slightly, and her lips brushed the air instead. The crowd clapped. Some took photos. We looked happy, and I knew something between us had just died in plain sight. Later, I stood alone near the champagne tower, fiddling with a cloth napkin. My parents had left early, Luca was off charming someone's bored niece. Cassandra was holding court near the dessert table, laughing too loudly at something someone said. "Are you okay?" a voice asked. I turned. Nora again, holding her camera like it was a shield. "You came back." "I do that sometimes." She smiled. "You don't seem like the running type." I looked down. I didn't run. I just stepped away. For breath. She glanced across the room. "There's a lot of noise in there." "I get it." We stood in silence for a few seconds. Then she said, "I wasn't going to say anything, but I shot a wedding here 2 months ago. Same room, same florals, same string quartet. Even, was it as tense as this one?" She laughed. "Worse. But the photos looked amazing. You'd never know the groom left halfway through the reception. Seriously disappeared. Just gone. Took the valet car and never came back." Wow. Turns out he flew to Oaxaca the next day. Married someone else 2 weeks later. His mother still sends him birthday cards, though. I looked at her and raised an eyebrow. "Are you trying to plant ideas?" "No," she said with a mischievous tilt of her head. "Just pointing out that cameras lie better than people." We both laughed. Quietly. The kind of laugh that only happens between strangers who've seen the same type of sadness dressed up in expensive clothes. "Do you want to get out of here?" she asked. I blinked. "What?" "Like right now, I mean." "Not forever. Just for air. I know a rooftop across the street. Quiet. No playlists. No assigned seats." I should have said no. Instead, I nodded. We took the back elevator, the one the hotel staff used. No one noticed. Or if they did, they didn't care. Cassandra was still posing for photos with her third cousin who once met Beyoncé's stylist. The rooftop was plain, just a gravel stretch with a few potted plants, a broken chair, and the best view of the party I never wanted to attend. We sat on a ledge, feet dangling above traffic. Below, I could hear music faintly through the open ballroom windows. "So," she said, breaking the silence. "Why law?" I exhaled. Honestly, I used to love arguing, but I hated making people feel small. Then I figured out you could use language like a scalpel, not a hammer. That's beautiful. I shrugged. Then I met her, Cassandra, at a merger meeting. She said I made her feel calm. I liked that. No one had ever described me that way. And now she mostly describes me as appropriate. Nora laughed, soft and genuine. "And what about you?" I asked. "Why photography?" She hesitated. "Because I have a bad memory." I looked at her, surprised. "I forget things." She explained. "Moments, faces, whole years sometimes. But if I take a picture of it, I can believe it happened. It's like anchoring yourself in a world that moves too fast." I nodded, slowly. "You ever wish you could forget certain things?" Though she turned toward me. "Sure. But forgetting something doesn't undo it. It just sneaks up later in some other form." We sat in silence again. The wind was cooler up here. I took off my jacket and offered it to her. She didn't say thank you. She just put it on. "I'm supposed to propose to her tonight," I said suddenly. Nora blinked. "Wait. I thought this was the engagement party." "It is. But it's performative. The proposal is supposed to be staged for photos, planned, perfect. She even sent me the script." "You're joking." I reached into my pocket and pulled out the folded note. "Say it when the sparklers come out. Get down on your left knee. Say something about her eyes. Then quote the line from Love Actually. We'll cue the music after I Choose You Forever. Then ring." Nora read it. Her expression changed. She wrote this, her and her mother. "I'm just the delivery boy." There was a long pause. Then she said, "Don't do it." I looked at her. "What? Don't propose?" Not like that. Not to someone who edits your voice before you speak. I studied her face. Honest. A little tired. No script. I don't know what would happen if I didn't. You'd be free, she said. Maybe alone, but real. And then, quietly, with a slight grin, she added, unless you wanted to do something wild instead. Like what? Propose to someone else. I laughed. She didn't. I looked at her again, and something clicked. It wasn't love. It wasn't lust. It was possibility. The kind of sharp, dangerous freedom that only shows up when you're standing on the edge of the life you're about to abandon. The city pulsed below. Somewhere inside, they were lighting the sparklers. The sparklers had begun to glow like synchronized fireflies, tiny bursts of celebration held up by people who didn't know what was missing. Or maybe they knew, and simply preferred the illusion. From the rooftop, I could see them guests forming a semicircle near the balcony, their phones raised, their expectations sharper than the glass flutes in their hands. A few staff members hovered on the sides with champagne and prompts. The DJ was queuing up 1,000 years for the fourth time that night. Cassandra stood in the middle, smiling, rehearsed, perfectly framed beneath the floral arch. She was waiting for me. They're going to think you're dead, Nora said softly, swinging her legs against the ledge. I looked down at my hands. Would that be worse than them thinking I'm obedient? She tilted her head. You don't have to answer that. The weight of the velvet box in my pocket pressed against my thigh. I hadn't even chosen the ring. Cassandra's mother had emailed options. Her sister had picked the final design, a custom cushion-cut diamond set in a halo of guilt and social status. It could have belonged to anyone. I stood up. You're really going down there? Nora asked, her voice calm but watching. I am, I said, but not to do what they think. She didn't move, just stared at me like I was something tragic in motion. You sure? No. Good. I offered her my hand. She looked at it, then took it without a word. The elevator ride down was fast and silent, like a heartbeat held in suspension. When we stepped out, we were in the back hallway near the kitchen. No music, just the clatter of silver trays and the faint smell of overcooked lobster risotto. A busboy passed by and looked between us. Confused. I nodded. He kept walking. I rounded the corner and saw the ballroom doors wide open. Through them, the sparklers, Cassandra's shimmering white gown, the cell phones, the perfect symmetry of expectation. Someone announced Elias is coming. I took a breath, then walked in, one hand still in my pocket, the other trailing at my side. Gasps, camera flashes, whispers. Cassandra stepped forward, all eyes on her, on me. She smiled with glossy lips and teary eyes, thinking she'd won. You're late, she whispered, her voice tight with practiced charm. We're ready. I looked around the room, then raised my hand, gently. Before I say anything, I began. I want to thank all of you for being here. Really, it means a lot to Cassandra, to her family. The crowd chuckled lightly. And I also want to say, I continued, that I thought long and hard about this moment, about what I'm supposed to do. I took the velvet box out and opened it. The diamond glittered under the lights like it was mocking me. Cassandra stepped closer. The music was swelling. But the truth is, I said slowly, I can't propose to someone who never actually asked me what I want. A collective exhale. Someone dropped a phone. Cassandra's smile froze. I was given a script. I said, and told to follow it. But I realized I've been following scripts my whole life, and I don't want to anymore. Murmurs now. The guests looked at each other, unsure if it was a joke. I looked at Cassandra, whose eyes had gone wide with fury. You deserve someone who wants this version of love, who thrives in performance. But that isn't me. Then I turned to the crowd and said, with quiet clarity, so I won't be proposing to Cassandra tonight. Gasps. But I will be proposing, I added, and every head turned in shock. I reached back, and Nora stepped forward. The room split in two, half stunned into silence, half wondering if they were on a hidden camera show. She stood next to me, not smiling, not playing along, just present. I met someone who reminded me what it feels like to be seen without a title, a timeline, or a template, and that's rare. So rare it almost slipped past me. I got down on one knee. The wrong one. Maybe. The right one for me. People were filming. Others were walking out. Cassandra stood there, frozen in satin and disbelief. I looked up at Nora. Will you go get coffee with me? Like tomorrow. No sparklers, no DJ, just two people who tell the truth. She looked around once, then said, only if you don't order anything with oat milk. Laughter. Real. Warm. Almost healing. We walked out, hand in hand, past the shocked guests, past the flustered planner, past Cassandra's father who looked like he'd swallowed a lemon dipped in gasoline. Elias, Cassandra shouted. I stopped, turned. She marched up to me. Do you have any idea what you just did? What you ruined? Yes, I said gently. My own erasure. You embarrassed me in front of everyone. No, I said, looking at her dress, her pose, her fury. You were never embarrassed. You were revealed. She slapped me not hard, but enough to make the room inhale. I nodded, took it, and walked away. Outside, the night was calmer. The wind felt earned. My lungs expanded in ways they hadn't in months. We stood on the sidewalk, unsure where to go. Now what Nora asked. I think I need pancakes. She smiled. I know a place that doesn't close. As we walked, I looked back once. The Belvedere's lights were still glowing. Music still played. But something had ended. Not with a crash. Not with applause. Just a choice. My own. We walked down 11th Street in silence, our footsteps echoing off the old brick facades and iron railings. The kind of silence that didn't feel awkward, it felt earned. Nora kept her hands in the pockets of my jacket, the sleeves too long for her arms. The ring box was still in my pocket, unopened, heavy with a story that would never be told the way it was meant to. You know they're probably still talking about you in there, she said softly. Let them. I've spent most of my life trying to make people talk about me less. For once, it's almost liberating. She gave me a sideways glance. You don't strike me as someone who enjoys drama. I don't. I paused. But I do enjoy clarity. We crossed an empty intersection where the streetlights flickered, washing us in gold for a few seconds before dimming again. A delivery cyclist sped past. The air smelled faintly of rosemary and exhaust. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked and a siren wailed. But the city felt quieter than it had all week. The diner was the kind of place that pretended it didn't know the year vinyl booths, handwritten menus, and a jukebox that hadn't worked since the Clinton administration. The hostess gave us a half smile and waved us to a booth near the window. Nora slid in first, and I sat across from her, finally exhaling. Pancakes, I said. Blueberry, she added, with burnt edges and real syrup. Not that sad cornstarch kind. We didn't need a menu. When the waitress came by, she looked at Nora's camera and then at me. You two journalists? She asked. Something like that. Nora answered. Good. You look like you've had a long night. She poured coffee into chipped mugs and disappeared again. I leaned forward. I haven't done something spontaneous in over 10 years. Really? Not unless you count changing tie colors at the last second. She laughed, then took a sip of coffee. So why now? I thought about that for a moment. Because I realized I didn't recognize the person who was about to get down on one knee. He looked like me, sounded like me, but he wasn't in me. He was a version someone else had rehearsed. And what about the version that showed up with me tonight? He scares me. Nora raised an eyebrow. In a good way, I added. Like finding out your favorite painting is hanging in a closet. I used to think love was about symmetry, I said, about compatibility, planning, two people with matching calendars and parents who liked the same wines. And now I think love might be someone who hands you your jacket without asking, or doesn't flinch when you say you're lost. She looked at me for a long second. You're not lost. You just left the wrong map. I let that settle. At some point. Nora took out her camera, set it on the table, and turned the lens toward the window. She clicked twice, adjusting the focus manually. The photo was of the street, but through the diner glass, framed by the steam of the pancakes and the reflection of us. You don't ask before you take pictures, I teased. I don't need to when I know I'm not stealing anything. That line hit me deep. We finished our food, lingered over coffee, then finally paid and stepped back into the street. It was almost midnight. I should call someone. I muttered, fishing out my phone. Family. Just let them know I'm alive. You don't owe anyone your suffering. No, but I do owe them honesty. Will they believe you? Does it matter? We stopped at the corner where the subway rumbled below. She looked at me. So, what now? I looked at the sky. Cloudless. Silent. I go home. I breathe. I return the ring. I cancel the floral contract. And then, maybe in a week, I go for coffee with someone who doesn't need a script. She nodded. I know a place. No sparklers, but they do have espresso. I smiled. Then I surprised myself. I reached into my pocket, pulled out the velvet box, and handed it to her. I don't want this anymore, I said. You don't have to keep it, but I can't take it back to them. She took it, gently, as if it might explode, opened it. Cushion cut, she said. Very Cassandra. Too symmetrical. She held it for a beat longer, then tucked it into her bag without comment. I won't sell it, she said, but I might take a photo of it someday. Promise me it won't be framed next to a wedding cake. No cake, she replied. Maybe beside a cracked sidewalk or a thrift store mirror. We both laughed, unsure what exactly we'd stepped into. Then she leaned in. Not a kiss. Just close. Close enough for me to feel her breath and the space between choices. I'm not your new story, she whispered. I'm just someone who saw you pause. That's enough. And she walked away. Not dramatically. Just her own pace. No one watching. I stood there for a long time, phone in hand, jacket open, wind curling into my collar. Eventually, I called Luca. Hey, he said, voice groggy. You alive? Yeah. You okay? I paused. I will be. Silence. Then I'm proud of you. Man, for doing the hard thing. Thanks. You sure you don't want me to leak that ring proposal video? For the memes, I laughed. Good night. Luca. I hung up, put my phone away, and walked into the quiet. The next morning, I woke in a quiet apartment that smelled like warm wood and the faint remnants of last night's rain. The jacket I'd lent Nora was draped neatly over the back of a chair, though I had no memory of her returning it. The ring box was gone, and I didn't miss it. I made coffee slowly, methodically, grounding myself in the silence. No pings, no congratulatory messages, no furious calls from Cassandra. I'd turned my phone off at some point after leaving the diner and had let it stay that way while I slept. The world could wait. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I owed anyone an immediate explanation. The apartment felt different now. Same furniture, same cold floor tiles, same framed degrees, but something in the air had shifted. Like the space was finally starting to belong to me again. Not just the version of myself I'd performed for others. I sat by the window with my mug, watching traffic crawl along the avenue. A mother in a wool coat held her toddler's hand as they crossed the street. A man walked by with a bouquet that looked just shy of too late. The city was moving, indifferent to what I'd done, and somehow, that was comforting. Eventually, I turned my phone back on. The notifications came in like a sudden storm missed calls, texts, emails, my parents, Cassandra's mother, the wedding planner, her sister, even my managing partner, asking if everything was all right in a way that wasn't really about concern, more about optics. I read each message, slowly, like leafing through evidence after a trial. Cassandra had sent only one. You humiliated me. You don't get to pretend this was brave. I didn't reply. There wasn't anything left to argue. Instead, I opened a blank email and wrote 2 sentences to the florist. The engagement is no longer happening. Please cancel the order under the Caswell Moretti file. I didn't need a refund. I needed a clean slate. By noon, Luca was knocking on my door with 2 bagels, a bottle of orange juice, and an expression that hovered between mischief and concern. I figured you might be hungry, he said, walking in before I could answer. Starving. We sat on the couch, eating in silence for a minute, the way brothers do when something massive has just happened and neither wants to poke it too hard. Is she going to sue you? Luca finally asked, half serious. I doubt it, I said, chewing. She'll probably just scrub me from every photo and tell her friends I moved to Iceland. He grinned. Maybe you should... Tempting? He leaned back and took a sip of juice. You want to talk about it? No. Good. I exhaled, grateful. Thanks for being there. At the party, even when it all turned to ash. He shrugged. You didn't burn the building down. Elias, you just stopped pretending it was yours. I looked at him. Did you know that it wasn't working, I guessed. But you don't tell someone mid-freefall that the parachute might be decorative. We both laughed, and it felt real, clean. After he left, I sat at my desk and opened my laptop. I pulled up the Columbia Law article that Judge Brenner had referenced. There, it was my name, my work, my argument about unjust arbitration clauses in the tech industry. I'd spent 2 years researching and drafting that paper, and yet, until last night, no one in Cassandra's family had read it. They had known I was a lawyer, but they didn't know what I stood for. Maybe I didn't either, until recently. I scrolled through my inbox. Mixed in with the chaos were a few unexpected messages. One was from Judge Brenner himself. Elias, what you did last night was not impulsive. It was courageous. Rare. If you ever decide to bring that clarity to the bench, let me know. We need people like you where it matters. M.B. Another was from a woman I barely remembered, an associate from a nonprofit conference 2 years ago. I saw the video. You probably didn't mean for it to go viral, but thank you. We've all been at the altar of someone else's expectations at some point. You just walked away. respect. I clicked the link she'd attached. Someone had filmed the rooftop proposal. It had already reached 1 million views. The title was clickbait, groom, proposes to a stranger at his own engagement party, and she says this. I winced, but I watched. The angle was shaky, the audio uneven, but it captured everything. My voice, Nora's deadpan humor, Cassandra's frozen expression, the slap, the walkout. I expected to feel humiliated, but I didn't. I felt documented, as if my choice had been marked somewhere, not just remembered, but witnessed. A third message caught my eye. It was from Nora. You forgot this. One photo attached. I opened the image. It was the diner, the booth, the two of us laughing, mid-bite, coffee mugs in hand, pancake steam curling toward the lens. In the reflection of the window, you could see the outline of the ring box, still sitting between us, unopened. It wasn't romantic. It wasn't epic. It was honest. I saved the photo. Then, impulsively, I wrote back. Maybe I forgot it on purpose. Maybe I wanted to see how it looked from your eyes. She replied almost instantly. In my eyes, you looked free. Also espresso at 10 a.m. tomorrow. You pick the place. No performances, no proposals, just coffee. I smiled. That night, I didn't go out. I didn't pour wine. I didn't call anyone to explain. I cleaned the kitchen. I lit a candle. I opened a window and let the night in. Then I stood in front of the mirror, not adjusting my tie, not straightening my posture, not rehearsing anything, just standing. And for once, I recognized the man looking back. Days passed with a strange sort of calm settling over the city and over me. The silence was no longer heavy. It was a quiet conversation with myself, one I hadn't allowed in years. Work emails came and went. Some colleagues called, tentatively asking if I needed support. I was still showing up at the office, but the usual rhythm had changed. No longer a performance, just presence. Nora and I met at a small, tucked-away espresso bar downtown. One of those places where the baristas knew your order and the espresso hit you like a whispered secret. The light was soft through the stained glass, the scent of roasted beans mingling with fresh pastries. We sat across from each other. No phones, no distractions. Just the steam from our cups curling like smoke signals between us. So, she said, stirring her latte. How does it feel, walking away from a life you were supposed to want? I paused. The question wasn't accusatory. It was curious, like she wanted to understand, not judge. It's like finally opening a window in a room that's been closed for years. I said slowly, fresh air, unexpected noise, but a chance to breathe. She nodded. I get that. Photography's the same. You frame a shot, wait for the light to change, then capture it before it disappears. You can't hold on forever. Her words settled on me, a kind of balm. Do you ever get scared, I asked, that the freedom I just found will slip away every day? She admitted. But I've learned that fear is part of the frame. It gives the image depth. We talked then about everything and nothing, the awkward silences, the books we'd read and forgotten, the people we wished we'd never met. No scripts, no roles. Just two people carving space out of the noise. Later, as I walked back through the city, the lights seemed less like spotlights and more like stars, distant, steady, unblinking witnesses to my unfolding story. I thought about Cassandra, about the golden party, about the rehearsed smiles. Part of me grieved the life I'd left behind, the plans that unraveled like threads in the wind. But another part of me felt something unfamiliar, hope, maybe, or the barest hint of peace. At the office, things shifted too. Colleagues who once saw me as just the fiancé of a family heiress now greeted me with genuine interest. Invitations came for panels, speaking engagements, even a guest lecture at the law school. I accepted some, declined others. I was no longer hiding behind someone else's spotlight. One evening, while sorting through mail, I found a letter from Judge Brenner. The envelope was thick, embossed with a seal I recognized instantly. Inside was an invitation to join his chambers as a junior associate. The words were formal but hopeful, offering me a place where clarity, courage, and truth were valued. I sat with the letter in my hands, thinking about choices and consequences, about the cost of being seen, really seen, about the freedom that comes from stepping off a stage no one asked you to stand on. That night, I wrote to Nora, "Thank you for reminding me what it means to be free. Coffee tomorrow, I think I'm ready for more than pancakes." She replied quickly, "Only if you promise not to propose." I smiled, closed my laptop, and for the first time in a long time, I felt whole. The city outside buzzed quietly, the familiar hum of life moving forward, unyielding and beautiful in its imperfection. And so was I. Weeks later, I found myself standing at the edge of a courtroom for the first time since that night at the engagement party. The old building smelled of polished wood and leather-bound volumes, the echoes of past trials folding into the walls like a secret breath. I was no longer just Elias Moretti, the reluctant fiancé or the lawyer trying to fit into a family narrative. Now, I was Elias Moretti, the junior associate for Judge Brenner, stepping into the quiet gravity of a world where truth mattered more than appearances. The first case I observed was a dispute involving workers in a small tech startup, fighting against unfair contract clauses, issues I'd poured my soul into researching. As the lawyers argued, I watched the judge's steady gaze, his words measured, his attention unwavering. I felt a flicker of something I hadn't allowed myself before: purpose. Thought you might like this. Attached was a photo of a cracked sidewalk, sunlight spilling over the cracks like spilled gold. The caption read, "Beauty in the break." I stared at the image, the simple poetry of imperfection resonating with me. I typed back, "Sometimes the breaks are where light gets in." Her reply came instantly. Exactly. That night, I sat alone in my apartment, the quiet no longer oppressive but comforting. I opened a book I hadn't touched in years, a collection of poems about identity and freedom. My fingers traced the worn pages as I read lines that echoed my own journey, fragments of courage and loss stitched together. There was no triumphant finale, no neat resolution, just a man learning to recognize himself beyond the roles assigned, beyond the scripted moments, beyond the expectations of others. I thought about Cassandra, about the Golden Hall, and the silent invitation to sit quietly in my own life. I didn't hate her. Maybe I even pitied the parts of her that were trapped, playing roles she never chose. I thought about my family, about the unspoken rules and the invisible lines drawn in boardrooms and dining rooms, the ones I had stepped over. Finally, not with defiance, but with quiet insistence on being seen. And I thought about Nora, the stranger who became a mirror, a voice, a hand reaching across the stage to remind me I could choose. There would be more challenges, more doubts, More moments where the old scripts called to me, promising safety in conformity. But for now, I was here, present, whole. The city outside my window pulsed with life, messy, beautiful, uncertain. And I was no longer a footnote in someone else's story. I was writing my own,